What's up, military millionaires? Today we're going to talk about the TSP loan and the truth about the TSP loan and when they make sense. So first off, what is the TSP loan? Well, the Thrift Savings Plan loan, or TSP loan, is a way to borrow money from your thrift savings plan and repay it to yourself at an affordable interest rate. They're fairly quick and painless to utilize and offer some flexibility regarding using uses and payback schedules. Ultimately, the TSP loan is a pretty cool benefit for service members if you understand the best ways to use it. And honestly, I don't, we're going to dig into this, but it's not always the best way to borrow money. Now, there's two types of TSP loans, general purpose and residential TSP, and the general purpose can be used for anything at all, requires no documentation, and has a repayment period of 1 to 5 years. The residential TSP loan can be used for the purchase or construction of a primary residence, does require documentation, and also has a repayment period of 1 to 5 years. For the residential TSP loan, there are a lot more rules than with the general purpose. So you can only use a residential loan for purchasing or constructing a primary residence, which may include any of the following: a house, a townhouse, a condominium, shares in a cooperative housing corporation, a boat, mobile home, a recreational vehicle, but you cannot use a residential loan for refinancing or repaying your existing mortgage transaction or construction of an addition to your existing residence. Renovations to your existing residence, buying out another person's shares in your current residence, these are just all things that you can't use it for. Oh, you can't purchase land, and only your primary residence must be purchased in whole or in part by you or your spouse. All right, now who is eligible to take out a TSP loan? I opted to take this answer straight out of the tsp.gov website, so bear with me as this may sound a little bit legalese, but look, you've got to be an active federal employee or member of the Uniformed Armed Services. You must be in a pay status because repayments are set up as payroll deductions. You can only have one outstanding general purpose loan and one outstanding residential loan from any one TSP account at a time. You must have at least $1,000 of your contributions, your own contributions and earnings in your account. And then agency and service contributions are and earnings cannot be borrowed. Has to be your contributions up to $1,000, and then you must not have repaid a loan of the same type in full within the last 60 days. If you have both a civilian and a uniformed account, the 60-day waiting period applies separately to each one. You must not have had a taxable distribution of a loan within the past 12 months, unless it was due to you leaving federal service, and then you must not have a court order against your account. I think that pretty much sums up everything that the TSP website says. So as long as you're doing that, then you're good. How much money can you borrow, right? So the minimum you can borrow is $1,000. The maximum you can borrow is either the half of your own contributions or $50,000, whichever is less. So if you've contributed $100,000, you could take out $50,000. If you've contributed $50,000, you can only take out $25,000. How do you repay your TSP loan? You're going to have to begin repaying within 60 days, but there's no need to stress too much about this because loans are repaid via payroll deductions, meaning that if you're an active duty service member earning $4,000 a month base pay, you take out a TSP loan that has a monthly repayment amount of $1,000 a month, you will only receive $3,000 a month in base pay until the amount is repaid because they pull it straight out of your checking account or your paycheck before you ever see it, which honestly does make this a little bit simpler as far as the repayment goes. Pros of utilizing the TSP loan: despite what I'm going to tell you in the cons section, the TSP loan is a pretty good product. Now, there are definitely some pros associated with it, and we're going to talk about those real quick. So the first one is quick access to cash. Once you successfully complete the TSP loan application, you're going to receive funds within 7 to 10 business days via a check in the mail. Yeah, I don't know why they're not doing ACH or electronic deposits at this point in time, but it is what it is. 7 to 10 days is really quick funding, so that's awesome. Second, the TSP loan is a very low cost loan. So there's a $50 fee charged for administrative purposes, and then that's deducted straight from your loan. So if you borrowed $50,000, you would actually receive a check for $49,950 because they would take that $50 out, and then send you the remainder. Your interest rate for repaying the TSP loan is whatever the G fund was earning on the date that your loan is processed. So currently on February 19th, when I wrote the article for this, the current interest rate repayment was 1.875%. That was the G fund rate at the time, which consequently is also why the G fund is not necessarily where you want to invest all your money unless you're close to retirement. The loan interest is not taxable, but it goes back into your TSP balance. So you're essentially paying yourself that interest rate. And then flexible use. So it's unsecured. Ultimately, if you want to use the general purpose loan, you can pretty much do anything you want with it, and that opens a lot of opportunities. But it also means you can buy stuff you shouldn't with it. So you still need to make sure that you're using the funds wisely. And there are several cons to borrowing this money, so we're going to dig into those right now. All right, now here is where I attempt the super difficult task of ruining this loan for you, despite all of the above reasons that it is actually a decent product. The problem is that most of the reasons it isn't great are completely intangible, but trust me, they're catastrophic, or can be catastrophic. Tax implications if you're borrowing from a traditional TSP, right? So a commonly overlooked issue with the TSP loans are the additional taxes that you're going to be paying on that money. Consequently, this is the one and only, I think, tangible reason that a TSP loan is not the best way to borrow money. So it is what it is. Now, show of hands, who doesn't love being taxed multiple times? Oh, yeah, me. Okay. So when you contribute to the traditional TSP, you are contributing with pre-tax dollars, right? However, when you're repaying the TSP loan, you're going to be doing so with post-tax dollars. That erases the entire benefit of the original TSP contributions in the first place, because the whole goal was not to pay taxes on your contributions. Now you're repaying with taxes on your contributions, i.e. paying taxes on your contributions. To make matters even worse, because the traditional TSP is taxed on the back end and contributed with pre-tax dollars, you're going to get taxed twice on that money. Because think about it, if you repay the loan with post-tax dollars, meaning you already paid taxes on it, and then the traditional TSP is taxed at withdrawal, and guess what? You're paying taxes the second time on that money, right? That's a bummer. That's why the Roth is awesome, because at least you're not getting taxed on the back end, and you already contributed with post-tax dollars, but you're contributing with post-tax dollars a second time, so still a sucker. It's a taxable event if you fail to repay the TSP loan. So here's another fun con. If you fail to pay the loan back, the IRS will view it as a taxable withdrawal of funds, which means that you will be assessed an instant 10% penalty in taxes that you owe the IRS. Talk about a fun bonus to have your loan costs suddenly jump up 10% immediately, and by the way, the IRS doesn't really care about you repaying over time. They're going to want that money up front. Opportunity cost. Okay, so I'm going to paint a picture for you. Let's say you took out a loan for $10,000 in January of 2021. And let's assume that the interest rate was an easy 2% and you repaid it in full in exactly 12 months with your monthly payments, right? Clockwork. Everything went smooth. Now, in the above scenario, you would have paid yourself $200 in interest for a total of $10,200 paid back to yourself. Now, what if I told you that money could have earned over 40% ROI if you just left it in the TSP? I know it sounds crazy, but in 2021, which again, albeit not a normal year, but in 2021, my personal returns in the TSP were 44.61%. So in the scenario with 40%, your account would have grown by $4,000. So by taking the TSP loan, your balance at the end of January 2022, 12 months from the inception, would be $10,200 back into the account, as opposed to $14,000 in the account. Now, the TSP loan actually cost you 38% in return on the money that was sitting there in opportunity cost. Now, obviously, the argument here is, well, Dave, what if the market goes down while I have the loan out? And you're correct. However, historically, over time, markets generally trend up over time, and attempting to time the market is just a losing game. And I've got videos on that, but trying to time the market on the bad end is just not worth it. Ultimately, you need to understand that there's a really good chance the TSP loan will cost you a lot more than the interest rate you're repaying. So that's just something you need to be okay with. And then also here, the risk of ruin. So I view my savings plan as my super duper emergency fund that I will only touch in a worst case scenario. For example, in March of 2020, when COVID first started to wreak havoc on landlords, I was able to look at the balance and say, well, Worst case scenario, I have enough money to pay all of my mortgages for 18 months, even if my tenants don't pay me a penny. In my opinion, you can't put a price on that security, and you lose that if you borrow from the balance, right? So, especially if you don't repay it. Also, the TSP fund is your retirement fund, so you're essentially borrowing from your future self in order to fund your current life cycle. So you need to make sure, like absolutely certain, that you're not assuming a risk that could wipe out your loan amount and then harm your future self. So you should just never assume the risk of ruin. So make sure if you're using this, it's either like a worst case scenario or some incredible opportunity that like is actually going to pan out, not a huge risk. All right, bottom line, should you use a TSP loan? Ultimately, that's going to depend on what you're using it for and your confidence in the ability to repay that loan. Here are my thoughts though, as a rule of thumb. If you need to take a personal loan, the TSP is a simple and efficient way to do that. If you have an emergency arise, the TSP loan is a decent option for digging yourself out of that hole. If you're just looking for a TSP loan to buy an investment, I would caution you to think through all of the indirect costs and the risks associated with borrowing these funds. It's probably not your best option. And for the record, just yesterday, I told somebody who was about to withdraw $50,000 from their TSP and lend it to me to help fund a deal that I didn't think it was the right move for them. So I'm not just saying this as like you shouldn't do this. Like, I genuinely think that had he done that, he would have actually lost money through opportunity cost over what I was going to pay him in interest. And it just doesn't make sense, right? I don't want to be a part of that. Also, I really do believe that time in the market is one of the most important things to maintain with your thrift savings plan. So look, bottom line is this. I promise you that there are better ways for you to borrow money out there, and I really hope that you look through those before you jump on the TSP loan, because it's not always the best option. It's a great option in its own right, but I don't like the idea of taking it out to buy things that aren't sure investments, right? So just make sure you know what you're doing. There are chances and times where this absolutely makes sense, but I err on the side of caution with basic finance, and then I like leverage and risk on big loans, but it is what it is. If you got something out of this video, make sure you like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your buddies.